Well, let's get more on this. Joining us from Washington, D.C. is Yousef Munayyer, the Executive Director of the Jerusalem Fund and its educational program, the Palestine Center. Yousef Munayyer, so a surprisingly strong condemnation from both the U.S. and the UN over the latest attack by Israel on another UN school. The U.S. said it was disgraceful. Ban Ki-moon said it's a criminal act. But apart from the strong language, the international community seems powerless to stop Israel.
Well, indeed, this is strong language in relative terms when compared to what the language has been in, the last several weeks of this massive Israeli attack on the civilian population in the Gaza Strip. But it's certainly not the kind of language that is needed given the circumstances. Back in 2002, just to provide some perspective here, the Israelis dropped a 1-ton bomb on a Hamas leader's home, killing 14 civilians, and at that time the United States raced to condemn what they saw as the targeting of innocent civilians for a strike that killed 14 civilians. We are seeing events like that every single day in the Gaza Strip now. Every day entire families are being annihilated. It is long past time for the United States to be appalled and to call this a disgrace. That was what we should have heard on the first day of these events, not 25 days in when you have 1,800 people who are dead, the vast majority of whom are civilians. And indeed, it was just earlier this week. Go ahead, sir.
No, I was going to say, so it does put under the spotlight then the U.S.-Israeli relationship, because many people are asking, what benefit does the United States get out of its relationship with Israel? I mean, Israel repeatedly embarrasses President Obama. It's castigated and insulted John Kerry. How much longer do you think Washington can put up with being slapped in the face by Israel?
I don't think it can put up with it forever, but the costs certainly are going to continue to grow. I think, as your viewers may have seen recently in this city just the other day, there was a very significant protest here, the largest numbers that I can recall ever on the Palestinian issue demonstrating here. There is a change of public opinion, particularly among the younger generation as it relates to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. These, of course, are the leaders of tomorrow. But this impunity that unfortunately continues today, I think will eventually change in the future. But in the short term, unfortunately, political leaders here in the United States still believe it is in their immediate political interests to continue to do everything that the Israelis would like, because at this point, it is still a hot-button issue in domestic American politics and too costly for them to even speak their conscience, though we've seen in hot mic moments the conversation privately and their private thoughts are much different than what they dare say in public.
And it does raise the question of Washington using its leverage, if it has any, against Israel. I mean, there has been precedence, though, hasn't there? I mean, in 1992, the then U.S. Secretary of State James Baker threatened to withhold loan guarantees for Israel unless they stopped settlement building in the run-up to the Oslo Accords. And the then Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, caved in and announced a settlement freeze. Could that pressure work today?
Well, I think it certainly can work, but it needs to be actually attempted. What we saw back in 1992 was when there was some leverage exercised, we saw a change in Israeli behavior as far as settlement building goes. It was one of the periods of slowest settlement development in the past 30 years after the United States' move on loan guarantees. But of course, the Bush administration, ended up being a one-term administration, was not in a position to keep pressing the Israelis on that front. But I think what that episode proves is if you do have the political will, if you do have the backbone to press the Israelis, then yes, that I think pressing the Israelis can bring progress. But it's clear that the Israelis today feel that they can thumb their nose not only to the international community, but even to the leaders here in Washington, D.C. And if that continues to be the case, I think we're going to see the Israelis continue to run rampant and berserk, not only in the Gaza Strip, but also in the West Bank. And the people who will pay the greatest price are the Palestinians.
Yousef Munayyer, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.